Hello, it's me, Mike, with HPDS. This video will be a reading and study of Exodus chapter 20. And before I get started, I will read the Lord's prayer. And it reads, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. All right. So this video, again, Exodus chapter 20, and per usual, I will go over where we are. Remember, the book of Exodus in general is Moses and the children of Israel being saved from Egypt by God, and God is performing many miracles. He performed a lot of miracles. It was something very supernatural, and it happened some nearly 4,000 years ago. I don't really know the math or the numbers right now personally, but it's something like 4,000, close to 4,000 years ago or so. Something miraculous happened, and it seemed to have happened for months on end. And we'll see what happens, even going into for years on end. God was with them for 40 years. We'll find that he's in this wilderness, this desert that they're coming across, that we've been reading, in Exodus. And obviously, if you remember Exodus, there was the 10 plagues. They were freed. They left. Pharaoh chased after them. What else can we say? Pharaoh chased after them. They crossed the Red Sea, and then Pharaoh was swallowed by the sea. And then, of course, we came across some issues with drinking water, some food. So they come across quail and manna. And then they, battle with Amalek. There was the rock of Horeb. These are some water things and some battle things. And then, in the previous chapters, 18 and 19, we came across Jethro visiting them. And Jethro was Moses' father-in-law, and Jethro brought Moses' wife and his children with him, and they went and met with them. And while they were there, Jethro gives them some advice on how to, set up a court system. And then, of course, after that, we come across last chapter, Exodus 19, where God was upon Mount Sinai. And if you remember God being upon Mount Sinai, the children of Israel go to Sinai. God speaks to Moses. They say, and he goes and says, if you do what I command you, you're going to be a special, a treasure. And I forgot the word. He's a treasure, a peculiar treasure. And, so, of course, if they do these commandments and listen to me, you're going to be a treasure. And the people tell them, yeah, we're going to do it. And so we started what some people call the Sinaitic covenant or something along those lines. But it's a covenant there at Mount Sinai that the children of Israel are making with God. And, of course, there was, God met with them, and he was able to speak real loud to them. And he was in the mountain, and nobody was allowed up the mountain. Or they'd be killed. So there was the army probably there. And Moses ends up, we're going to see he has to go up this mountain through this storm, where everybody else just kind of watches from afar. But Moses go up to, we'll read that in this chapter. So, so that's where we're at. They're seeing God up on this Mount Sinai. So this chapter is still in Mount Sinai. And let me go ahead and show this outline here. We've got Exodus 20. Obviously, this one is called Commandments for Israel. And people get the 10 Commandments out of this one. I count a few more, and I'll show a little picture of what I mean by that later on. But we'll see what's going on here, and I'll show you how the 10 are derived. But past that, what we're looking for is basically 1 through 17. We have the Commandments for Israel. And in verses 18 through 21, God has come to prove you. He's going to go and prove them some more, just like he was doing just do some things. And then verses 22 to 23, we're going to hear some making of idols forbidden. And so, of course, he's going to talk again about this. It's part of the commandments and about, how we're not supposed to make idols or have false gods and so forth. Because remember, he has proved himself to be the one and only God. And that is why he destroyed Pharaoh and all of his, Egyptian host, because they were running around calling themselves, he was calling themselves a living God, and they were worshiping all sorts of false gods. And God is going to tell you why he doesn't like that in this particular chapter. And then the last couple of verses, 24 through 26, we're going to hear some rules for building altars. And I think why a lot of people, and I'll make mention of this, but they call these 10 commandments, but I believe there's a few more, and I think why this, I'll talk about it later. Let me just go ahead and read through the chapter as it is. So let me get started. Almost there. Okay. Exodus 20, as read from the King James Version. And it reads, "And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But in the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And all the people saw the thunderings, and the lightnings, and the noise of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, and when the people saw it, they removed, and stood far off. And they said unto Moses, Speak thou with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. And the Lord said unto Moses, Thus thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, Ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. Ye shall not make with me gods of silver, neither shall ye make unto you gods of gold. An altar of earth thou shalt make unto me, and shalt sacrifice thereon thy burnt offerings, and thy peace offerings, thine sheep and thine oxen. In all places where I record my name, I will come unto thee, and I will bless thee. And if thou wilt make an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone, for if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. Neither shalt thou go up by steps unto mine altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. All right. And that is Exodus chapter 20. And of course, what did we read just now? To the 26 verses that were there. Basically, the verses 1 through 17 were the commandments of Israel. And this is where people derive these 10 commandments. And I'll show my little picture of how I count a little bit more, and I could see how they're combined and why people think they're combined, and I don't necessarily think they should all be combined. And I'll explain why that I believe that most people and the what I'll call the wickedness, the spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what we're going to have in this world. We have this. That's what our war is about. And, when you understand the Bible further on. But the spiritual wickedness in high places being, a lot of these people that actually create these studies and kinds of Bible literature out there that aren't really the most holiest of people. And these 10 commandments, when they call it the 10 commandments, I think there's some 10 commandments later on, but these ones are the ones that they kind of start off with. And these ones that, there's actually more than 10 commandments. And I think they kind of reduce this to a strict number of 10 because they know that what they're doing is wrong and they don't want to admit it. And so especially when you come to the last few, because let's see, the commandments 1 through 17, that's the verses 1 through 17. We actually see later on at the end, 24 through 26, that there were rules for building altars, and they completely leave those out of the commandments. And you wonder why when you start seeing all these churches around you that are made of giant hewn stones. And God tells us, don't do that. And there they are with altars of hewn stone in these big giant churches that you come across. And not even giant churches, small churches with small altars. And it's ridiculous. They don't even know what they're doing because they've reduced it to 10 commandments instead of explaining a few more commandments out there. But in verses 18 through 21, we see that God proving the people, and he's going to prove it with another miracle that they're not going to die, because they all think they're about to die, basically. They're all afraid of dying. That's how bad this storm is. That's how bad everything, this sound is. That's how loud. They're afraid of dying. They're in a very huge storm, and they after all these great things that they've gone through and they've been being saved, now they feel very threatened by the Lord when he comes up in his form. And then in verses 22 to 23, we come across another thing about making idols. It's forbidden. And of course, at the end, the building of altars. So let me go ahead and reread it, and I'll kind of explain it as best I can through the Holy Spirit, what's going on here. So here it goes. Let me make sure I got all this. Yeah, okay. And it reads, and God spake all these words, saying, so God, obviously, he's still talking to these people from this mountain, and there's this storm that he came across him. He's in, fire, thunder, lightning, all kinds of stuff, earthquake, the whole mountain is shaking. Everybody's there. And remember, they're not, in any kinds of buildings. They're just out there. They're camping out. So they probably just had tents and so forth. Probably a lot of people just sleeping outdoors as well. But anyway, this is what they can hear him. They can hear him. Everybody can hear him. And he continues on. And he's saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So he's reminding the people, I'm that God that has brought you out of Egypt. I've done all this. You are all, so everybody knows, even historically, these people knew that people interacted with gods, and gods, that was their whole concept of, you come across like stories of other outside the Bible, like a lot of people want to bring up the Gilgamesh story, that his is very similar to Jesus or so forth. They knew, he was basically a demigod, something like that, but it was all very intricate things that happened, and God here is proving them like he's done it. Like, you hear the stories And these people got to be the story. They are. They're seeing it. They're in it, and he's gonna tell them. Remember, I saved you out of bondage here, and he's telling them because of that. Now here's what I am as a God to you, and here are my laws. Like, this is why I've done it, and here's why you need to understand about me, and these are the things you need to do in order to be to be a treasure. So he's been telling them, you're gonna be a treasure to me, a peculiar treasure. And this is how, by following these commandments. And it starts off with, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." That's the first one. And of course, let me go ahead and bring up this image. If you could see this image I've created, and it's just the commandments, and here you can read them all. I can read them all here, and these are all I've just copied and pasted from the, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the..." So I've counted a few more, and you could see there's more than 10 that I've counted and differentiated, and I'll show them after I read through them a little bit more. But here, like I said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." That's one. Here's the second one. "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." Okay, so most people, most of the establishments also add this one as part of that. So they usually are contend that this is one by itself. I have no other gods before me. And then they combine these 4 and 5, verses 4 and 5. They combine into kind of one where they say, and a couple of other ones, because let me see, my picture shows this one: "Thou shalt not make any other graven, and thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them." And then later on, when we come across in the later verses, "Ye shall not make with me gods of silver, neither shall you make ye unto gods." These are 3 different commandments the way I see them, but most of the establishments just kind of combine them into one commandment. Don't make any graven image. That's one of them. First, you're not supposed to make an image, which is got huge implications. These couple of verses have huge implications, especially in our world today, because there are pictures of everything under and in the skies and in the earth, and we love it. The internet is just filled with pictures of everything, all the animals and all the everything. And God is telling us right here, you should not make any image. And of course, it's a graven image. He's really gonna stress this. Don't make any pictures of anything that is like in the heaven. So we're not supposed to be making pictures of, say, dolphins or birds or animals or any of that. And like I said, the internet, if you know the internet, you know that the internet kind of worships cat pictures, for example. It's just the way I'm putting it. That's just the way the Holy Spirit is saying it through me, and this, so it has huge implications in why and our world is the way it is today, because here we are breaking this commandment. We're not being very much of a treasure to the Lord, because we're not listening to this. And on top of that, we're combining these because the next one is, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me." So not only are you not supposed to make pictures of anything that's in the heaven or on the earth or in the water, so we're not supposed to be making any kinds of pictures of any kinds of animals, is what it definitely seems like. Or more than that, we're not really supposed to be making pictures of even, like, say, clouds or the sun. That's another big thing, and that's why you get into what NASA, if you understand a little bit about NASA, they're not supposed to be making those pictures of the earth. This is what God's telling them right there. You're not supposed to be making the images of the earth beneath or the water under the earth, or because and I don't know if if you come across the earth and its shape and everything that's going on with what NASA, all these pictures of the stars, and they're making it sound like the universe is something that it isn't. They're trying to say we're spinning through a vast and endless universe that's expanding and one day will collapse in on itself, and that's just not what it is. And they're talking about black holes and suns and millions and billions and trillions of miles away, unfathomable distances. The sun is giant and we go around the sun when the sun goes around the earth. But, that's not exactly what they're preaching out there from NASA. And they're more than that, they're really doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. They're breaking this commandment by making images. But never mind the images. That's one commandment. The next one is don't bow down yourself to them. And it's not talking about the pictures. He's talking about the things that is in heaven or that is in the earth or that is under the water. He says, don't bow down. You're not supposed to be like these pagan worshipers, calling every animal a god. You're not supposed to be bowing to any kinds of animals. You're not supposed to be worshiping any kinds of animals. You're not supposed to be calling God an animal. He's appeared to you right now, and look at what he looks like. He looks like what I made mention of in the last chapter, that he's we would know him as natural phenomenon. Right now he looks like the scariest storm they've ever seen. It's a storm that has everything. It's got thunders, lightnings, fires, earthquakes, so forth. Dark clouds. It's just scary. They're terrified of this. That's what he looks like. And remember, in this whole time that he's been leading them through when he was leading them away from Pharaoh and them, he came in the form of a cloud. Remember, he was a cloud, a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. So he was, what we know most of the storms come with, that we know on, to this day, come with moisture, rain, snow, hail. When a storm comes, it's usually bringing moisture. But here, this storm is doing something that's impossible. It's bringing fires as well, and so of course, scientists would like to say, oh, the lightning was starting fires. Okay, that's what they'd like to say. But no, he was saying the whole mountain was on fire. There was fire coming from the sky too. And of course, we know that even in Genesis, he rained sulfur out of the sky too. So in this day and age, we mostly consider a storm. Most storms are moisture driven, other than, I guess, sandstorms or something along those, windstorms can take away probably moisture with something. I don't really know how storms entirely work according to meteorology, but here God is saying that they also some storms have fire. So that's interesting to keep in mind in that last chapter, obviously. So that's what he looks like. So that's why he's telling you, I'm not any kind of animal. You don't bow thyself to them, nor serve them. So he's not talking about the graven images here. And so that's why it always they want to combine these into one commandment when it's clearly two separate commandments. First off, don't make any of the pictures. Second of all, don't serve anything that's in the sky, let alone a picture. Why are you going to serve a picture or a little image? Don't. Why are you doing that? You shouldn't even make it in the first place. So that's what I mean. This has huge implications, and that's why I believe that, in today's world, that what we know as spiritual wickedness in high places, church officials, the Pope, I would tell you, don't be bowing yourself to this Pope, man. And people do it all the time. And other, there's lots of cults out there where people are, people are coming across cults and they're just more and more every day. We've known about famous ones in the past. You're not supposed to be bowing down or, creating gods out of anything that's any kinds of animals, not just the humans, but the animals, the birds, the fish, the beasts of the earth. We really shouldn't be doing it. Those are two separate commandments. Don't make any pictures of it, and don't serve any of the things that are in the earth. Why are you serving you serve God. I'm God and I'm not of the earth. But continuing on, he says, he explains why you shouldn't worship these other gods and why you shouldn't make any pictures these other things that and calling. Of course, that's why we know of. If you hearken all the way back to Genesis 3, when the fall occurs, I think it's Genesis 3. But Satan comes as a snake, and of course, when you get to Revelation, you're going to find out that this little snake has basically become this giant dragon with many heads. That's the beast. It's got many heads, and one's dead and comes back to life, and that's in Revelation. But basically, it's going to be a creature from the earth. It's going to be something that it's an animal, a creature, just like we consider humans nothing more than animals. So everything else that's alive would be some sort of an animal, alien, dragon, whatever it might be. Some sort of creature, some sort of animal that comes from heaven or the earth or from the sea beneath or even the water under the earth. And that gets into more things that people don't want to admit what's going on out there. But there's a lot of things, a lot of animals, but none of them are God, is what he's saying. You shouldn't bow down thyself to them nor serve them. And he tells you why. Because I am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So this is really talking about how it's his love for us. This is called, this is a letter, a love letter to his church and so forth, that we come across later on with Jesus Christ, because Jesus, he's talking about all this right here. And so what he's talking about is just think about, like, if you're in a relationship, you have a spouse, and if you were taking pictures of all these other women, all these other contenders to you, or to your, women, man, whatever you are, your opposite spouse, they got a bunch of pictures of, you're a woman and your husband's got a bunch of pictures of women all around him for whatever reason. God's telling, he doesn't like that. If he was the wife, or if he's the husband, if you're the wife, so forth, why do you got a bunch of pictures of other men in your things? God hates that. God hates you having pictures of these other things, let alone, here comes, don't even serve them. Now, never mind the pictures. Why are you serving these other things? Why do you love this other animal more than me? Why do you love this more than me? Why do you love that more than me? Don't serve any of them. God is jealous. He's talking to you. That's how jealous he is. And I will, the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, I visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate. He follows the children of the people that, he knows everything. Remember, like I said, he keeps track of everything. And he visits the iniquity. So he will punish your children for what you do. He will punish your children's children for what you do. He will punish your children's children's children for what you do. So it is, it's very serious what God is telling you. Remember, and I did make mention in Exodus 19 about he's really showing his immortality and his longevity. Everybody knows that they die within 120 years at this point. After the flood, people started dying much sooner. They were not growing to be as old as they once were. And of course, he's still showing how old he is. He continues to, he's immortal. He goes forever. He will visit the your children's, for what you have done wrong. And he will make, so forth. But of course, he also shows mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So that's why he's also saying, but at the same token, you are the product of my favor to Abraham and well, actually to Jacob as well. Israel, Jacob. This in particular is to Jacob. Jacob, remember, wrestled with God all night and made him bless him before he'd leave him and so forth. But here we are kind of getting into, because that's exactly, I'm contending with you, I'm wrestling with you, so forth. That's what they want to say. They're fighting with God. And remember, they're at this point, they're all hearing God say this. They are being told that everybody can hear this, and they're all camped out there from the mountain, and they hear it coming from the storm. It's so loud they can all hear it. He's telling them, don't make any pictures. And that in itself, like I said, think of the implications. Because we make pictures of things all the time. There's an entire industry, I guess technically, and this is why we need grace, because technically I'm probably making a graven image right now with this video of myself. And so in that sense, you see, this is why we're breaking the commandments, and because of it, God is punishing. He'll punish you if you do these things. And in this day and age, that's why I say it has a lot of implications in this day and age, because just think about, and I know a lot of people, I don't want to drop any names, but think about any documentaries out there where people love to hear their voice over these nature documentaries, and we have some famous people doing it quite often. But those whole documentaries made by these, Discovery channels or these National Geographic people and so forth. So never mind that I, talked about NASA. Think about these History Channel kind of people, these television people, these, and they make documentaries about all these animals, this and that, and everybody loves them so much and loves these pictures and thinks it's really beautiful and all this. But at the end of the day, that is a strict violation of the commandment. These so-called 10 commandments have these two combined, but they don't want to separate them because they want to make it seem like you shouldn't make images and serve those images. So they're saying, real specific. Not only should you not be making pictures, like I say, and then not serving anything that is in the world, they're making it seem like don't make images that you serve, So you can make a picture of an animal as long as you don't worship it, or you can make a picture of a person even though you don't as long as you don't worship it. And that seems to be the problem here, is that it's what's going on in this world in this age, and most people are we're really confused as to what it really means, I think, because they're really making it specific. They're being very selective about these commandments that God has given them, and they're not following them all, but they're really tricking themselves into thinking they are, and so forth. But of course, like I said, it's because it's a love thing, and he gets jealous that you shouldn't be, God, look at, I'm the storm. Here I am as this storm. You're afraid of me. You're afraid of me right now, but I'm just because, it's really kind of a love thing. You got to understand that. And if you don't understand love, that's just why he gives us a spouse, or why everybody's allowed to take a spouse especially if problems with adultery, you got to take a spouse. If you've got lust in your heart, you should take a spouse, and that should cure your lust and your adultery, as long as you come to it with Jesus Christ and understanding of God and his blessing and so forth. But here we go, continuing forth with another commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. So you don't take the Lord's name in vain. And of course, people don't understand this commandment as well. So some people just consider it swearing. Don't say, of course I won't say it now either because of other people, but when you put God's name and then you start saying, damn it, that's a big one. Or if you curse his name, that's a huge one too. You shouldn't say, F you, or holy kind of, and you say that other word. There's a bunch of things that you could say, but it's not just the words and the cursings. It's more than that. It's taking his name in vain, meaning acting on his behalf. So, of course, this is why the churches of today and the spiritual wickedness in high places, a lot of these people should be, they're taking God's name in vain by getting up there and being a preacher and then later renouncing their faith. That's a huge thing. If you're a pastor and you've got a flock of people and you got people coming to you and you're preaching the Bible, and then all of a sudden one day you say, oh, you know what? I don't actually believe none of that. Never mind. Forget everything I just said for the past 10, 20 years. I'm getting divorced from my wife and I lost my faith. And that's a story out there that something happened recently, but whatever. That person, that's taking God's name in vain, or being like Judas. Judas ultimately was the I think the epitome of that. Judas, if you know the story of Jesus, Judas basically only cared about the money and took care of the money, and then he took a little bit of money to get Jesus arrested, and Jesus got executed. And then he kills himself. He hangs himself, and it was they have to replace him, Judas Iscariot. That's taking the name's Lord in vain, doing his, supposedly being in his church and being a member of his people, and then completely saying, you know what, I don't really believe any of it, and I want to do whatever I want to do, so forth, etc. That's also taking the Lord's name in vain. It isn't just curse words, though that is one of it, because then you're also if you're talking God's name, if you're calling things holy that are disgusting, then why are you saying that? Or you're saying, gee, damn it. If you're saying that he's damning something, that's what you're using his name in vain if he doesn't damn it, and so forth. So that's another one of the commandments. And now continuing on, here's another commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And of course they combine these commandments. The next few 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. So they kind of combine this. Remember the Sabbath, and that's the commandment itself. But these commandments it's kind of multifaceted. It's first off, there's 7 days in the week. That's you got to remember that. You can't have a calendar with some sort of weird more than 7 days, like an 8-day calendar or 10-day, 7 days. That's what God says. There's 7. That's the calendar. 6 of those days are work days. You're supposed to be working. You got to be doing out there working. So it's not, it's 6 days you work. And of course he's going to give you, he's going to give festivals throughout, and he's going to give what we would know as holidays and so forth. And then of course the Jubilee comes around and so forth. But of course he's telling them right now, 6 days you got to go work. That's 6 days of work right now. But the 7th is the Sabbath. And so remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. That's one commandment. Here's a facet of the rest of that commandment. 6 days shalt thou do labor and do all thy work. And then, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord. In it thou shalt not do any work. So he's telling you, first off, you're supposed to keep it holy. But this also is a part of keeping it holy. Don't do any work. Nobody does any work. Nobody, not even slaves or servants, nobody that works for you. You're not supposed to be ordering people to go to work on the Sabbath. Even though if you're the boss, if you're the king, you're not supposed to have it. You're supposed to make sure as the king that nobody goes to work on that Sabbath day. You're supposed to just keep it holy. Keep it holy is one thing. Not doing work on it is another thing, because keeping it holy, if you do, you could have this separate. You could not do any work. You could pretend you're keeping the Sabbath. Oh, here's the 7th day. I'm on the Sabbath. I'm not working. And you're just sitting at home and you're doing something disgusting. Sinning. You're sinning at home. And that's what a lot of people, that's not keeping it holy. So keeping it holy is one thing. Keeping it holy is praying to God, cleaning yourself. I imagine, taking care of your household, your children. You're making sure that they all read the word, that everybody that you come to, you're just talking about the word. That's what keeping it holy is. We're talking about this and this alone today. And in today's world, it should be the Bible all Sunday long. That's how. And even Sunday is technically the first day of the week, so technically the Sabbath is Saturday, so it should be Saturday. And everybody works Friday night and parties into Saturday night, and they're partying on Saturday night, and then Sunday they're waking up and going to church. So you notice that they're not remembering the Sabbath. They're not keeping it holy. Maybe they're not working on Saturday. but they're not keeping it holy if they go, if they're partying. And that's what, the culture is, party on a weeknight, which is Saturday. But technically, you get what I'm saying? You're not supposed to be doing any work, and you're supposed to be keeping it holy by basically only doing godly things and talking about God. But of course, they combine these, even though they're, like I said, they're not necessarily combinable. 6 days shalt thou do work and labor. That's another commandment, all of it itself. Don't be like the churches of today that preach 1 day a week on a Sunday. They don't do any work the rest of the week, yet they're collecting all kinds of money. Sunday they have the mega churches, and they come in and they'll make so many thousands of dollars in 1 day for a couple hours of work, and then they go on their way and they don't come back until next Sunday, and they just read another pre-recorded, pre-written, something like that. They'll write it doesn't take very long. Look, I could do a lot in an hour. I could write from the Holy Spirit, write a whole sermon of just things by reading out of the Bible. So these people just go out and they do it, and they make a couple hours of work, an entire week's worth of money, and instead of doing 6 days of labor, they're doing 1 day of labor. And they're doing it on the day that they're not even supposed to be doing the labor, if they're honoring the Sabbath. So it's very counterintuitive, and that's what I mean when I say that spiritual wickedness in high places has kind of molded what we know as this church culture, this Christian culture, this culture of Bible thumpers. I would say something like that. And even though they don't, they're picking and choosing what these commandments, and they're combining it so that in this book, they want to say there's in this chapter, 10 commandments in this chapter. If you read a lot of it, people say, 10 commandments. This 10 commandments is Exodus 20 right here, 10 commandments. But in my little picture, I counted 17. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or likeness. So this is the image one. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them. So he's talking about the creatures or anything in the heavens or anything, or the earth or the waters. He's saying don't make any images is one. Don't bow down to any of these things is another. And that includes the pictures, obviously, because a picture of something. So if you had a picture of a bird and you worship that picture, that would be idol worship. But if you made the picture of the bird, then I guess technically that's breaking this commandment without necessarily breaking this commandment, so forth. And you could also bow down to a bird and worship a bird, for example, and never make the picture of it, and that breaks this commandment. And so that's what I mean. That's 3 different commandments. The 4th one is thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. That was a simple simple commandment, even though it's complex and people don't understand how complex it is. Remember the 7th day to keep it holy. That's another one. And then, like I said, I come across here, which is 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord. So this one is remember the Sabbath, and then here's 6 days shalt thou labor. And so this is the one I kind of combined. 6 days shalt thou labor. No, that isn't. That's just one. Don't do any work on, I did kind of mess up. 6 days shalt thou do labor and do all thy work. But 7th day is the Sabbath. So I even combined those two myself, and I think I did that on accident, quite honestly. With this picture that it was a recent picture. I was just making it to kind of keep track of myself. But that goes even to say that, do all thy work, and then the 7 days of Sabbath, they're separate commandments in their own right. First off, make sure you do work all 6 days. Don't confuse it to do what they're doing now, which is 1 day of work and 6 days, so, and then also on this one, on the Sabbath day, make sure nobody works, but also keep it holy. This is a different commandment. So this is 6 days do labor. That's one commandment. The 7th day, and all 3 of them combined simply make up the calendar. If you want to combine them, all it's saying is make sure you got 7 days in a week. That's what your calendar should consist of, 7 days. And then we go on. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth. the sea, and all that is in them, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he hallowed it. So you see that he's telling you that this is also this is explaining this. It's saying, you keep this calendar because that's the calendar I made. I did work for 6 days, and then I rested on the seventh day, and I made that seventh day. I blessed it, and I made it hollow. I made it holy. That's what he's saying. That's why you do this. You keep it. This, they're three separate commandments in their own right. Combined, if you want to combine them, it makes another commandment to keep this calendar. So don't make this calendar that's all backwards and has more than 7 days or less than 7 days or something different than this 7-day week. And that's what he's saying. Altogether, those are separate commandments. And the only one that you can derive from it is the calendar one. And then he goes on to honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So that's another commandment. And I see right here, honor thy father and thy mother. That's the commandment. And of course, the commandment is one thing. He's telling you why you should keep that commandment. So if you honor your father and mother, then you're going to live a long time in the land that's what he's really saying. Ultimately, whatever land I give you, if you honor your mother and father, you'll be living there. You'll grow and live old lives by simply honoring your mother and father. That in itself is its commandment, and this kind of gives you an explanation for itself. Because not all of them do that, but this one is one of them that's really telling you honor your mother and your father. And then it continues on. Thou shalt not kill. That's another one. Thou shalt not kill. And so that's kind of interesting because it doesn't, the word kill doesn't really, if it said murder, that maybe mean of another human being, but to kill also means to kill an animal, perhaps. And so that's why we have to understand why the priests are the only ones really allowed. They should be doing all the sacrificing. So it seems like the priests ultimately are the people that should be doing the killing. That's why you take them to you take your sacrifices to them. And so, of course, in the Passover, it seemed like it was a shortened version. And so everybody had to do it for their own house. Every house was responsible for killing the lamb. And that's kind of like where God said, you're going to be a nation of priests. So these whole people are priests. Every last one of them is a priest, even the people that aren't priests of the priestly class. So remember, God has used the children of Israel, and he tells them if he keeps the commandments here, that they're going to be a treasure in because everything belongs to him. The whole world belongs to him, he says. And you'll be made special. You'll be separated. You'll be holy, and you'll be a nation of priests. And so that's why he's telling, you're not going to kill. If you're not, the person that's supposed to be killing, you shouldn't be killing. So that's why they were all allowed to make their own kill, because the priests are the ones that are going to be given some sort of authority, and they're the ones making the sacrifices. And that's why there's always all kinds of blood involved with their sacrifices and so forth that we've even come across already, I believe. But remember with the lamb, they had to spill all the blood and so forth, and they were supposed to cook it well done, and so forth. So the killing is something that only the priests are supposed to be doing, and that's a commandment all in itself that a lot of people don't want to, maybe they change it to murder. They're not really understanding that, if you're not a priest, you really should be taking your food to some sort of priest, if you're going to live this life. But of course, this all changes, or this is, we're given grace later on for, through Jesus Christ, because all those that are under the law are under the law. But, later on we find throughout the rest of the Bible, we're under grace. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're allowed to kill. It just means that food is something different. And that's why God said, Jesus Christ got into the whole breaking of bread, saying this is my body, and the spilling and the drinking of the wine was in this is my blood. And he was kind of talking symbolically, because you're not supposed to be killing. We're not supposed to kill. The priests are supposed to be the ones doing it. And then going on to another one, thou shalt not commit adultery. And obviously everybody knows what that means. You shouldn't be cheating, sleeping around in general. Fornicating would also be adultery in general. In particular, later on in the Bible, we realize that basically all sexual immorality is some sort of adultery, and is in itself idolatry, is what God, because you're worshiping the body. The human body is what you're doing when you're sleeping around and having sex and fornicating with people, multiple people. Especially if you're married, it's even worse. Thou shalt not steal. That's another one. Don't steal anything. Just don't steal. That's another. Just all in its own right. Don't steal. And here, like I said, I have these all as separate ones. Honor thy father. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. And the next one, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. That's another one. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. So you could see that's another one. Don't lie. That in general is don't lie. Don't say somebody did something when they didn't do it. Never mind lying. If it's false, you shouldn't do it either. We shouldn't be saying, if we don't know, if we weren't there to see it, we can't say that that's what happened. So that is something that, in itself is another big, this is kind of lying, but it's more than that. It's also talking about things that you know nothing about is also lying. If you're just talking with people and you don't think you're lying, or you're saying this and that about this person, or especially how we talk about famous people. They love to let us talk about famous people like that. That's why they give us, they want you to talk about Mr. Trump, the president, like this or that, or talk bad again about Obama. And there's plenty of things that they've done that, we can go out there and witness for ourselves because of the video evidence and so forth. At the same time, we shouldn't be adding more to what we've seen personally or we've come across. We shouldn't bear false witness saying that it happened when we don't know that it happened. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his maidservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And here is, I separate these in two separate ones. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house is one, and the next one being, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his house, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. So it's really, a lot of people would combine those, don't covet, do not covet. They simply say don't covet. And that in itself might be, don't covet anything. But it is being specific, your neighbor's house, saying, first off, his house, his property, his land, Second of all, not his land, but his people, his wife or his servants or his animals, so it's nothing, so to not covet anything that is your neighbor's, that's one thing. You get what I'm saying? But, and I guess this one is one of them that I would say ultimately seems kind of, don't covet anything. Don't wish for things that don't belong to you. Don't want things that somebody else has that you don't have. That's really kind of the essence of that one. So I guess this one, that's why that one is always usually combined. Don't covet. But I would make sure to remember that there's multiple things to covet in these commandments. And ye shall not make with me gods. So keep going on. Oh, look right here. We're gonna get into, so that's 1 through 17. I'm just now getting, this one's a good one because there's a lot to talk about all these commandments here. So thou shalt not covet, so we read that one. 18, we get into, remember 18 through 21, God has come to prove you. So now we've read, God has dictated out these commandments and exactly kind of why they're supposed to follow these commandments, his reasonings behind some of them. And then he continues on, and all the people saw the thunderings and lightnings and the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood far off. So, of course, like I said, here they're all afraid. They're terrified. They can hear everything. They can hear what God is saying. They can see this storm. They can see this mountain. It's on fire. They're terrified of it. they're kind of far away from it. They get out of there. They're like, oh, we can't. It is too terrifying for us. And that's why they go. And they said unto Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. So here they are terrified. They say, stop God from talking to us. This voice, it's too creepy. It's too scary. We're too afraid. We're going to die. You go talk with him, and we'll listen to it. We're done. We believe you now from they're already, that's the whole deal is, remember I kind of made mention of that in the last chapter. They were like, well, we've never heard you talk to God. We've never heard God. All we know is, sure, you've showed us some sign, Moses, but as far as we're concerned, you're the one doing the things. So do this for us. Do that for us. That's what they were treating Moses. And now they're being told, first off, don't be bowing to anybody on earth. You better not be praying to Moses. Don't be praising Moses. That's what those commandments are up here kind of about. Moses is not doing this for you. I am doing this for you. Moses is the one I'm talking to you, because if I didn't talk to Moses, this is how I would talk to you. And this is what he's really showing. This is how I would come and talk to you but no, you want Moses, right? Here they are telling him, no, you go do it. At first they were kind of complaining, grumbling against Moses. Now they're saying, never mind, Moses, you keep doing what you're doing. We'll keep doing whatever you tell us, Moses. You talk with us and we will hear, but don't let God speak with us unless we're going to die, because they're all terrified of what's going on this mountain. And verse 20 goes on to say, let's see. And Moses said unto the people, fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. So he's telling you, I've come to prove some things to you. He's coming to prove himself to you. He says, don't be afraid. You're going to see some things that are unbelievable, some more proof. You're going to see proof of God. And that way it'll make you sin, not sin. It'll keep you from sinning ultimately. It'll prevent your future sins. You're going to see this proof of God, which, for example, we know in this day and age, everybody wants proof of God. They say, oh, if God exists, where's the proof? Where's the proof? Well, they got their proof. And that's why, they're, like I said, we're still talking about it 4,000 years ago. They got their proof. And many people did. Here you have, like I said, there's probably close to 1 million people running around right now that's seeing this. Let's see. God came to prove you. And so he's going to say, you're going to see that fear may be before your faces, but nothing's going to happen to you, because you're going to survive. And the people stood far off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. So like I said, Moses goes up this mountain, basically. He goes to where everybody can see him go. Everybody's pretty sure you're going to die. Like I said, everybody's don't go into that storm. We're going to die. But Moses is saying, look, don't worry. Look, he's going to show you proof. I'm going to go up there. And he goes up there. And that's what he's going up to there. And he survives it all. And of course, the people they're still going to hear him talk. God didn't stop this. Just because they asked, he's still doing it. He's doing what he's doing. And the people stood far off. And so Moses draw near to the darkness, right? And he goes and here goes, the Lord said unto Moses, thus thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. Ye shall make, and so of course he's telling them, and at this point, Moses is telling them, don't be afraid. This is happening. I'm going to go in there and we're all going to live through this, and you're going to live through it, you're going to hear it, and so don't be afraid. I'm giving you proof. So he goes up there again, and then God talks again. Of course, everybody could still hear him. And the Lord said unto Moses, thus thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. So he's telling them, and everybody knows now. Now you know I've talked with you from heaven. So now everybody knows that I talked to you from heaven. Moses, everybody knows Moses, right? All these people know because they're here seeing it for themselves. And he tells them here we get into verses 22 to 23, making of idols forbidden. So he's telling them again, remember, you all know that I talked with you. I've proved myself to be God. And he says, now remember, do not make with me gods of silver, neither shall you make unto you gods of gold. So they would, lots of people, and that's where I get into this. Ye shall not make with me gods of silver, neither shall you make unto you gods of gold. So some people just throw that in there with this idolatry stuff, this graven image and bowing down. Don't worship false idols. But this is a different commandment all in itself. This is saying, so this one is don't make any pictures. This one is don't bow down to anything in earth or in heaven or in the waters. And this one is, and don't make gods. This is basically talking about statues. Don't make gods out of, don't make statues. So pictures and statues, and then the actual act of worshiping any of these things. So that's what God is really saying. These are all separate commandments that the establishments have combined into one group of 10 commandments that they say 10 commandments. That's what it is. But here's some more commandments that people at the end, the 24 through 26, we have the rules for building altars. And here's another in particular: an altar of earth thou shalt make unto me, and shalt sacrifice thereon thy burnt offerings and thy peace offerings, thy sheep and thine oxen. In all places where I record my name, I will come unto thee, and I will bless thee. So he's saying, you're going to make an altar for me out of earth. So basically out of dirt. And that's where you're going to sacrifice your burnt offerings and your peace offerings and your sheep. And that's where you're going to make your sacrifices. Okay? And then that's just one commandment. Make an altar of earth for me. And then the next commandment is kind of and if you make you can make an altar of stone, because that's also, he considers that earth. So you can pick up rocks and make rocks as part of your altar. But he says, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone, for thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. So that's another huge one with big implications. That's why the establishments, the religious establishments, don't really like talking about this one as a commandment, because, like I said, many churches are made of stone, and this is these temples. We recognize later on when we come across King David and King Solomon, why he explains. King David wants to make an altar, wants to make a temple for the Lord, and God says, why? When have I ever asked for a temple? And so forth. I'd never need one. And then later on, we find out what Jesus Christ considers the temple and what he made of it, and so forth. So these people go in and that's their altars is by, like the big church, the big mega churches have giant buildings, and they're all made out of stone. They're all made out of concrete, this or that. They've got huge marble such and suches and so forth. And God is saying that do not make anything like that and worship me there at that altar. If you put a tool upon it, you have polluted it. So our altar should be completely handmade of the dirt and rock. No tool upon it. Because if we put a tool upon it, we've polluted it. And so God is very humble. But more than that, he's very specific about this. He does not like the fanciness of our tools or our work, the work of our hands, is what he's saying. This is something that he does not like, the work of our hands. He only wants us to basically, basically, is what he's saying. Don't worship me by the work of your hand. Don't worship me by the work of your hand. You worship me understanding the humbleness of everything, that what I have done with this earth and with the rocks, and what you're doing with these sacrifices, and why you're eating and so forth, and you're a nation of priests, and only the priests are allowed to be doing this, and so forth. And so that in itself is, you shouldn't be making these big churches, is what I'm getting at. If you go there, and I realize that, and that's why I don't really do it anymore. Going to these churches, I realize that even the most humble of the churches that I've been to, with the most sweetest old people that continually, worship Jesus, you realize that there's something wrong with the pastor or even with some of the members of the church, that there's some sort of spirit in there that isn't godly, that's pretending to be godly, and they all worship something wrong. And chances are it's because, first off, they've built this temple, this altar for the Lord that, is with tools, and we should really be doing it on the earth, with the earth, bunch of dirt, Just dirt. We should just be moving dirt by hand and rocks by hand to make an altar. That's it. Just by hand. And that would be what God is looking for his altars. And more than that, where we should be sacrificing our food, and so forth. And then the last verse, neither shalt thou go up thy steps unto my altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. And of course, that is pretty strict about, that's pretty, talking about temples being made of pyramids. This is pyramids. But that's exactly what I'm getting at. It's the same thing, the fanciness. Don't make your church where you keep your altar in some sort of fancy building that you have to go upstairs. And like I said, mega churches, I've seen giant, I could go, perhaps we could Google up mega church buildings. Church buildings. I don't know. I'm just images. Look at all these, like I said, they're intricate, Why are you going up these stairs? So many, all these, this has all been made tooled. All these are tool created all around your temple. And look at all these churches out here that, are made of this rock. Oh, look at this one. Look at this one's real fancy. The Crystal Cathedral. And I'm just randomly, these are just mega churches. These aren't even like, what I guess what we could call like, non-mega church, but whatever. The point is, the matter is, look at it. That's what God is saying not to do. Don't be doing this. Look at this guy. Here's his altar back up here, and you're going up steps, simple steps, and all these are. Look at this. That's not what God is saying to do. This is some sort of entertainment. This is not worship of the Lord. This isn't making sacrifice to the Lord. That's some sort of entertainment. At best, they can teach you something, but even then, they're not. The teaching is a form of worship, and this is lots of times they're just scamming you for money is what it seems like. So, but of course they don't consider this as part of a commandment, one of the 10 commandments. That's just not even a commandment. The 10 commandments on their own, I think, are this one, thou shalt have no other gods. And then this one is combined to the idol worship. 3, thou shalt not take the Lord's name. And then 4 is remember the Sabbath. 5, honor thy father and mother. 6, thou shalt not kill. 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. 8, thou shalt not steal. 9, thou shalt not bear false witness. And 10, thou shalt not covet. And like I said, that's the 10 commandments that they come across. But, I count on this one. I think I counted 17 on the ones that I made. And I think this one I should have been 2 more. So there's probably 18. I know I see it right there. There's my little... No, I did something wrong where I forgot to split this in 2 and I copied and pasted them together. Anyway, but the point of the matter is there's something like 17, 18 that I come across in the form that I come across, but they condense it into 10 and they completely forget these ones about the altar. And they love to call this the 10 commandments, even though they don't talk about the altar making and making these mega churches, and all these mega churches are all... Like I said, that's not what God is looking for. That's not where God is. You're breaking his commandment by doing that. Anyway, that appears to be Exodus chapter 20. And I'm pretty much going to end this video here. And I guess let's see. Let me see. I'll go over again. This has been an interesting chapter in my opinion, because these commandments are a lot more intricate than people want to say. They just call them the 10 commandments, but there's more to it than that. And because there's more to it than that, a lot of the masses have been confused into thinking it's just 10, and they break a lot more commandments that and they don't understand why the world is wicked, or that they themselves are wicked, even though they never learned what they're doing. I mean, it's right here. There's more than 10 commandments. There's quite a few commandments, and so forth. Anyway, I'll end this video now. I'll just say, of course, if you're watching this, God bless you. If you're watching this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for future chapter by chapter Bible studies. And I pray that we all bless Jesus Christ, and that Jesus Christ blesses all of us. So, like I said, God bless you. Amen.